So you should already know a pretty decent amount about Homer, if he existed or not, based on both readings that you've completed, but especially that crash course video on the Odyssey. So who was Homer? Just to rehash some of these things real quick. Nothing's known about his life. If he was a person, he is said to be the author of Greece's most important two literary works, the Iliad and the Odyssey. The Iliad focuses on the Trojan War, especially on Achilles, portrayed in Troy by Brad Pitt, kind of shown here, and Achilles' withdrawal and the really disastrous effects that has on the Greek campaign and the Trojan War. He also writes is wrong, he also recounts the Odyssey, which is a story of Odysseus' travels. According to a hymn that was written to honor the god Apollo, Homer was a blind man from the island of Chios who died in Eos. You don't need to know where those are. Eos itself is kind of a hot European summer party destination these days. But one thing that's kind of interesting is there's a Greek epigram, or like a phrase that is used a lot. It's kind of rhymey, and it says, 7 wealthy towns contended for Homer dead, through which did the living Homer beg for his bread. In other words, while Homer was alive, if he was alive, he probably wasn't all that well known, and he was kind of a beggar, and he was a storyteller. But his importance is such that everybody wants him to be from their place later on. Okay, so Homer's verses, the stories that he told, and actually not just told, but probably sung, because much like the Epic of Gilgamesh, it's a lot easier to remember things if you sing them. So the stories he would have sung were first put down in writing around 750 BC. And why were they put down in writing? Because if you remember from a couple slides ago, by that point the Phoenician alphabet had been introduced and it could finally be done. The stories are way older than that though, and they had been memorized by traveling poets, we call them bards, for generations. And they earned a living by reciting and singing them. So let's think about this, and let's go back to the importance of oral tradition, which we've already examined in this class. Maybe these things are exaggerated. Maybe they turn into those fish stories where things get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. But they're also used to pull out significant themes. Themes that are meant to instruct and guide people into how to behave. They are told to kids for moral lessons and guidance. And in many ways, you can tell that this was an oral tradition by reading the Odyssey itself. So for example, every new chapter starts the same. It says, Dawn with her rosy red fingers shone. And to an audience who's listening, it's like listening to an audiobook. It says chapter 2. You know something new is coming. So those elements are left over. But what is particularly important about Homer's works is that they allow the Greeks to create a common set of values that enshrine Greeks' own ideas about themselves, right? So much like what a good person should behave like in ancient Mesopotamia can be figured out by looking at the Epic of Gilgamesh, or how you should behave if you are a particular element of Vedic society can be discerned by looking at the Mahabharata and the Rig Veda. You can figure out what Greeks thought Greeks should behave like by looking at these epics. So these poems provide kind of the standard definition of an epic. It's a poem that is really, really freaking long, enormous scope. It's got dramatic language, and it concerns the deeds of one particular person, of a hero who's trying to overcome something. So that provides an ideal of what a hero should be. What I would like you to do, and by the way, I failed to mention this, so the statue in the middle is supposed to be Homer, and you can kind of see him totally being blind. On the other side, you see how the Coen brothers in O Brother, Where Art Thou, which is supposed to be based on the Odyssey, portray both Odysseus, George Clooney, and the Cyclops, John Goodman. What I would like you to do now is click on the link, the Cyclops Cave, and I would like you to watch the clip that I have linked there. It's from a pretty lousy 1980s or 90s TV show based on the Odyssey, so the graphics aren't great, but they are kind of entertaining. And this is a clip about when Odysseus gets stuck along with a bunch of his sailors in the cave of a Cyclops or a Polyphemus and how he gets out of it. And what I'd like you to do is, as you watch it, think about what makes Odysseus a hero. What type of traits does he portray? Does he do some things that maybe don't seem honorable? Like, does he lie, cheat, or steal? And why would Greeks have appreciated that? What types of things do he and his sailors do that identify them as Greek and show some common Greek traits? And once you're done with that, on the next slide, we'll kind of unpack some of those things.